Hakeem Olufemi Gbajabiamila. God bless you all.
Lingering fuel scarcity has compounded the woes of millions of Nigerians struggling to survive as prices of items continue to make a rapid surge.
House calls for lasting solutions to lingering fuel crisis in the country.
I made a commitment that the 9th House will be a reform assembly.
And Speaker Femi Gbajabiamila speaks on the 9th House, describes it as very productive. It's time for another fresh package of the legislative program House Tickets, coming to you on the parliamentary channel of the NTA, a program designed to bring you events and activities of your lawmakers from the Green Wing of the National Assembly. My name is Dihelia Mamza. Glad to have you join us. The lingering fuel crisis and the need for alternative energy sources were amongst issues discussed in motions in the week under review. Bills to institutionalize various tertiary institutions were also part of the legislations considered by lawmakers during plenary proceedings. Details of this and other events make up our package of House Tickets this week. Starting after this timeout, don't go away.
The entire purpose of the legislative agenda is to direct our legislative resources and efforts in a coordinated effort to ensure the well-being of the individual in a life of safety and freedom. That is a high ambition, but it's well worth the effort. We have passed landmark legislation to fix our oil and gas industry, reform the police, and reorganize the corporate administration system in our country. We have considered and passed meaningful legislation that impacts all areas of our national life.
Welcome back. As earlier mentioned at the beginning of the program, we shall start off with reports from plenary in the last 1 week, starting with matters of urgent national importance, motions from the other paper, alongside bills at various stages of consideration. Let us have the report as compiled and presented from our studio.
The Deputy Speaker of the House, Representative Ahmed Idris Wase, presided the plenary proceedings of the House of Representatives for the week under review.
Further disturbed that the inability of the regulators of
Representative Said Abdullahi moved a motion on the urgent need for the federal government to prefer a lasting solution to the lingering fuel crisis in the country, given the upcoming Yuletide season.
lingering fuel scarcity has compounded the woes of millions of Nigerians struggling to survive as prices of items continue to make a rapid surge. It has added a high cost of living to Nigerians, which surged to a 17-year high of 21.09% in October this year. Further disturbed that the inability of the regulators of the petroleum sector to end this artificial scarcity of petroleum products forced the Department of State Security Services to issue an ultimatum to the NNPC and oil marketers to end the artificial scarcity within 48 hours.
In his prayers, the lawmaker urged the House to urgently call on the authorities in the petroleum sector to make sure the artificial fuel scarcity is brought to a halt, that the relevant committees of the House on Petroleum Resources should ensure compliance. The motion was voted on and adopted. From the order paper came a motion on the need for alternative and renewable power supply in Nigeria was the title of a motion moved by Representative Chukwuma Omeoji.
Nigeria's inability to achieve stable power supply over decades is a pointer to the fact that its over-reliance on gas and to a lesser extent hydroelectric power sources alone needs to be reviewed. Observes that the lack of electricity supply in rural areas is a deterrent for businesses to thrive, thus resulting in rural-urban migration, which leaves the rural areas grossly underdeveloped. Aware that despite government efforts to fix the problem of power sector, most business organizations depend largely on alternative power sources as generators to function effectively.
The House adopted the resolutions to urge the federal government to focus on exploration of renewable energy such as nuclear, solar, biomass, and wind as nationwide alternative sources of power supply to residents. Also urged the federal government to establish a clear investor-friendly framework for private sector investment in alternative power supply across the country. Mandate the Committee on Power to liaise with relevant stakeholders in the public and private sectors to develop the best strategies for sustainable alternative and renewable energy distribution in the country. Several bills were presented for first reading, amongst which include National Commission for Museums and Monuments Act Amendment Bill 2022, sponsored by Representative Dachung Musa Bagos. Nigeria Security Academy Establishment Bill 2022, sponsored by Representative Sani Umar Bala, and Institute of Leadership and Entrepreneurship and Corporate Governance Bill 2022, sponsored by Representative Oluga Taiwo. At second reading, quite a number of bills came up during the week under review, amongst which are a bill for an act to provide for establishment of Chartered Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineering in Nigeria to certify, regulate and determine the standards of knowledge and practice to be attained by persons seeking to become chartered electrical and electronic engineering personnel and for related matters. The bill, which is a Senate bill sent for concurrence, generated debate.
The law of 2004 is to determine how this engineering, in different categories of engineering in a higher institution are supposed to be predicated upon. This law tends to conflict with it. I wonder whether we are making law for sanity of our institution, or we are making law to create chaotic nature.
If every sector of the engineering will seek to become independent, and if it's going to improve on our system, one, it doesn't take anything in terms of resources, but apart from harnessing the intellectual capacity of the various persons, and you should understand that the bureaucratic bottlenecks created virtually in most of the institutes is part of the setback. We celebrate our Nigerian counterparts each time they make a huge success outside the country. Yet we do not care to find out what are the reasons as to the things that is bringing to achieve those things they are achieving.
I am, by the effort we made in this house, a fellow of Nigerian Society of Engineers, an honorary fellow for that matter. And it was based on the actions we took in amending the act, which is the current act. And it brought some harmony. It brought some guidance with regard to the practice of engineering. Whereas it might be meritorious, mutation of laws in this republic, creating various establishments, can lead to a chaotic consequence.
The bill scaled second reading and was referred to the Committee of the Whole. In another debate, the House considered a bill for an act to establish National Root Crop Production Institute Igbede Ekiti State, and for related matters, sponsored by Representative Olushola Steve Fatoba.
There is an institute that takes care of crops in Nigeria. Now, all you need to do is by application, that because there are a lot of agricultural, activity in these areas, you apply to such institute and you make provision for fund for it. At the end of the day, such institutes are approved. Many have been approved in this assembly through that means. But when you want to establish, how many institutes of crops are you going to establish in the country? And that is duplications. Outside duplication, Mr. Speaker, we are saying that since 1999, our economy has been in deficit because of too much institute we're establishing.
We have similar institutions, maybe with different functions at various locations across the geopolitical zone of the country. I would beg that just like we have like ones in the Leather Institute and the remaining such institutions, you could have one agency, but if you want to now open up another branch or center, it's just to apply administratively. That may be the best approach.
The best that we can do in the circumstance is, as Honorable Osai rightly alluded to, is for the establishment of a center in Igede, as he rightly proposed in his bill, but not to establish a full-fledged research institute on root crops, because one, it amounts to duplication, and as a house, we are trying to, as much as possible, discourage the proliferation of institutions.
There are quite a number of establishment bills that have come up which are more or less duplication, multiplication itself of so many agencies. But we also know that as representatives of different constituencies here, we have needs of our various constituencies which we are meant to channel through this hallowed chamber. And Mr. Speaker, I know there was an understanding at a session here about a month or two ago that we should allow establishment bills to pass at least the second reading. If we get to the consideration of the matters, maybe to the public hearing or other legislative processes, they can be handled.
The bill was voted on, approved for second reading, and referred to the House Committee on Agricultural Institutions. Still on bills, several skilled third reading on the floor of the House, namely, a bill for an act to provide for establishment of Federal University of Education Katsina Ala and for related matters. A bill for an act to establish Federal Institute of Fisheries Research Ogidigben, Delta State, for fishery research, education and cooperative training in Nigeria, and to make comprehensive provisions for its due management and administration and for related matters. A bill for an act to provide for establishment of a specialized National Dermatology Hospital, Garkida, and management board for the hospital, provide dermatological treatment, research and training, and for related matters.
You're still on to House Tickets, a weekly program designed to bring you activities and events of your lawmakers in the Green Wing of the National Assembly. The second edition of the Distinguished Parliamentarian Lecture, organized by the National Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies, held on Monday, 12 December 2022 at the International Conference Center, Abuja. Speaker of the House of Representatives, Femi Gbajabiamila, delivered a lecture during which he spoke on the contract between the Parliament and the electorate. Highlights of this event in our next report coming up shortly. Keep watching.
Please be seated. As you please put your hands together for the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
In his lecture at the second edition of the Distinguished Parliamentarians Lecture Series, Speaker Femi Gbajabiamila speaks on the commitments he made that the Ninth House will be a reform assembly.
I made a commitment that the Ninth House will be a reform assembly. I envisioned the center of policy innovation and an agent of transformation in the administration of the affairs of the Nigerian state. My colleagues and I recognize that keeping that promise required a structured approach to legislative policy making. That structured process, by necessity, had to begin with articulating our policy goals, development ambitions, and the priorities to which we would devote scarce resources. This is how we came to the idea of a legislative agenda designed for the House of Representatives with input from stakeholders.
He added that the Ninth House of Representatives has been an unusual productive parliament despite the limitations imposed by the global pandemic.
We have taken legislative action to address long-standing challenges of governance and economics in our country. We have passed landmark legislation to fix our oil and gas industry, reform the police, and reorganize the corporate administration system in our country. We have considered and passed meaningful legislation impacting all areas of our national life.
He pointed out the challenge being faced by the Ninth Assembly on the current constitution amendment.
It is doubtful that the current constitutional amendment effort will conclude before the expiration of the legislative term. I pray it does. We want it to, because the amendments are far-reaching. But the National Assembly right now is functus officio. So we're done. We've moved the ball to the state assemblies. And I'm glad that the Senate President did appeal to Governor El-Rufai to talk to his colleagues for us to quickly advance our course of democracy and return these far-reaching amendments, which we painstakingly, as a House and as a Senate, put together for the good governance of Nigeria.
So it's like always starting again and again.
Speaking earlier at the lecture, the Senate President, Senator Ahmad Lawan, in his remarks said that the lecture was an opportunity for Nigerians to interact with members of the 9th National Assembly, which is a form of enlightenment on several issues.
So what we have been able to achieve in the 9th National Assembly, especially in the House of Representatives, will be presented here today. And this is an opportunity for also our citizens to ask questions. Because what we need to do is to enlighten Nigerians on what we do, what our challenges are, because this is what you pay us to do, and we must account for what we do to you. It is also an avenue for we in the Parliament to tell our stories to the wider audience, so as to change the misperception and misinformation in the public domain.
The Senate President also touched on the issues of the Constitution review.
The outcome of our Constitution review, and we are yet to receive all from the states. So we should be able to wind up this process by getting responses from the State House of Assembly. And some of these issues that you have raised that require our attention, of course they will be given the attention. But I think it is important that we deal with what we have already sent out to the State House of Assembly, and then we take the next steps. And even if it is 1 month that we have left, we have the capacity working together to ensure that we pass some of the legislation that are required.
The chairman of the occasion, Governor Nasir El-Rufai, commended the 9th National Assembly for passing groundbreaking laws.
This 9th Assembly has passed the most important and seminal legislations in this Fourth Republic. While I was DG of BPE, we began the draft of the Petroleum Industry Bill in 2002. It went through several governments until this 9th Assembly finally enacted it, I believe, some 18 years later. Congratulations.
The Director General of the Nigerian Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies, Professor Abubakar Suleiman, in his remarks, said the purpose of the parliamentarian lecture was to serve as a platform where members of the parliament could share their stories, programs, accomplishments, and challenges, which will further make legislative processes clearer to Nigerians.
Today's lecture, like the maiden one, is an avenue of legislative narration and a veritable platform connecting both the elected representative and the people beyond the confines of the two hollow chambers.
Speaker Femi Gbajabiamila was given an award at the occasion. The award was presented to him by the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa. Also present at the occasion were the Clerk of the National Assembly, Minister of Women Affairs and Social Development, Dame Pauline Tallen, former INEC Chairman, Emir of Kefi, who represented the Sultan of Sokoto alongside students of the University of Abuja.
The program is House Tickets, bringing you reports from the Green Wing of the National Assembly. Deputy Speaker Ahmed Idris Wasi has pledged the commitment of the House to strengthen parliamentary relations for the benefits of the West African sub-region. He stated this when he received the Ghanaian Speaker, Mr. Alban Kingsford Sumana, and his delegation from the Ghanaian National Assembly Commission. who paid him a courtesy visit on Tuesday, 13th December 2022. The Deputy Speaker, who received the Ghanaian Speaker, on behalf of Speaker Femi Gbajabiamila, called for the creation of more parliamentary friendship groups where lawmakers will interact and educate one another, as well as create understanding between the two parliaments.
Speaker have asked me of Nigerian Parliament, your friend Femi Gbajabiamila, to express his regret for not being here personally to receive you. He had wished he's here personally to receive you because of the friendship, because of the understanding between Nigeria and Ghana, the role played by a predecessor when we had issues in the country regarding our citizens, when he paid a visit, and what has come now to be a very rewarding visit that the understanding brought, and then the peaceful coexistence that have now come to stay, that I should thank you immensely and make it public his own appreciation of your visit and that kind gesture and the friendship so far expressed and given and the support given to him in his own vision to realize what would be like a common kind of a community service in terms of the interests of Africans and African Parliament.
The Deputy Speaker said Nigeria and Ghana have a lot in common and pledged to improve synergy between the two parliaments, which will benefit not only the two countries, but also the entire sub-region.
I want to believe with the working relationship between Nigeria and Ghana, we will work better to ensure our region benefits from our own various experiences. I want to believe, like I did mention to you, we are working very closely too with our colleagues who are from Ghana and the West African region. I mentioned Airga and Co, who they are very close associates. And Nigeria and Ghana, there's not much different. It's just a very thin line created by the colonial masters and for their own personal interests. But in the whole, what we are supposed to be doing is the interest of our own people and the interest of our own community. What do we do to synergize, to bring in things that will benefit and be beneficial?
While speaking earlier, the Ghanaian Speaker, Mr. Alban Kingsford Sumana, stated the purpose of their visit to the National Assembly.
I must congratulate Nigeria because you've gone very, very far, starting from 1999 to date. There have been great improvements. And I pray that you continue along that way. Together in the sub-region, we could market the good values of our democratic experiences, unique democratic experiences. I'm here to do a very important assignment, which the chairman of the National Assembly Services Commission, together with his colleagues, commissioners, happily and graciously accepted to host us and to share the knowledge and experiences that they have in running, managing, and working with you to make democracy a reality for our people in Nigeria.
The Ghanaian Speaker was accompanied by the Ghanaian National Assembly clerk as well as some senior staffs of the parliament. There were presentation of gifts by both parties.
Persons for us. So this is for you, and then in the well. This is for your consumption.
It is on that note that we draw the curtains on this episode of the program. Do keep your comments, observations, and questions coming in through our platforms showing on your screen. We'll do our best to get our representatives to address them accordingly. Let's do this again next week on this station. Until then, bye for now.